The Grand Assembly Hall of the Galactic Confederation buzzed with excitement. Hundreds of aliens from different planets sat in large chairs. They all looked at a big screen on the wall. Admiral Tejo stood tall, his 4 eyes fixed on the screen. The screen showed small ships moving through space. The ships were tiny compared to the Confederation's massive vessels. "Look at these primitive ships." Admiral Tejo laughed, his blue skin wrinkling around his mouth. "They dare to enter our space." His 4 eyes blinked one after another, showing his amusement. The other aliens in the room joined in the laughter. Some had tentacles, others had wings, but all thought the small ships were funny. Commander Jisoo moved closer to the screen. She tapped it with her long finger, and the image zoomed in on one of the small ships. "The hull is made of basic materials," she said. "Our smallest ship could destroy their entire fleet." More laughter filled the room. The Confederation had ruled this part of space for over 500 years. They had never met a species with such simple ships before. In the back of the room, Junior Intelligence Officer Sunwoo sat quietly. Unlike the others, he did not laugh. His 3 eyes narrowed as he studied the ships. They moved in perfect formation, like dancers in space. The energy readings from their engines were unusual. Something is different about these ships, Sunwoo thought. They are small, but they move with purpose. He made notes on his data pad while the others continued to joke. Admiral Tejo raised his hand for quiet. "Who are these newcomers?" he asked. Commander Jisoo checked her screen. "They call themselves humans from a planet called Earth. They have only recently developed space travel." "Humans? Never heard of them," said Admiral Tejo. "Send them a warning message. Tell them to leave our territory or face consequences." "Yes, Admiral," Commander Jisoo said with a smile. "They will probably run away as soon as they receive our message." Sunwoo wanted to speak up, to warn that these ships might be more than they seemed, but he knew his place. Junior officers did not question admirals. Meanwhile, aboard the UES Pathfinder, Captain Hyori Kim walked around the bridge. Her ship was the largest in the human fleet, though it would look tiny next to a Confederation vessel. The bridge was busy with activity. 20 crew members worked at different stations, monitoring screens and pressing buttons. The air smelled of coffee, and the hum of the engines vibrated through the floor. Captain Hyori stopped behind Navigation Officer Dohyun. "Report," she said. Dohyun pointed to his screen. "Captain, I'm picking up massive structures at coordinates 227.4. They're definitely not natural. Nothing in our database matches their size." Hyori leaned closer to look at the screen. The structures were enormous, at least 20 times bigger than the Pathfinder. "Could they be space stations?" she asked. "Possibly," Dohyun replied. "But they're moving. I think they're ships, Captain." Hyori's heart beat faster. After years of searching, humans had finally found alien life. But she felt worry, not just excitement. Any civilization that could build ships that big would be far more advanced than humans. "First contact protocols," she ordered, straightening her blue uniform. The crew immediately responded, their training taking over. Lieutenant Minji moved to the communications station. "Preparing diplomatic signals on all frequencies, Captain. Universal greeting messages ready to transmit." "Good," Hyori said. She turned to another officer. "Jawan, keep defense systems on standby. Passive mode only. We don't want to appear threatening." Jawan nodded and tapped on his screen. "Defenses ready but not active, Captain." Hyori looked at the main screen, which showed the starfield ahead. Soon, they would meet aliens for the first time in human history. She hoped it would go well. "Send the greeting message, Minji," she ordered. "Message sent, Captain," Minji replied. "Now we wait." The bridge fell silent. Everyone looked at the screen, waiting for a response. After a few minutes, Minji's console beeped. "Captain, we're receiving a transmission. It's alien." Excitement spread through the bridge. Hyori tried to stay calm. "Run it through the translation program." Minji worked quickly. "Translation coming through now, Captain." Words appeared on the main screen. The crew read them in silence. Leave Confederation space MMEDATLI. Primitive vessels will be destroyed if you do not comply. The excitement on the bridge turned to tension. That's not very friendly, Jawan said. Hyori frowned. It could be a translation error. Maybe their language is very different from ours. What should we do, Captain? Asked Minji. Hyori thought carefully. Running away might look weak. Staying without responding might look aggressive. She needed to show both strength and peacefulness. Send another message, she decided. Explain that we come in peace and wish to establish friendly contact. Include information about Earth and humans. Show them we are not a threat. Yes, Captain, Minji said, typing quickly. Do-Yun suddenly called out, Captain, the alien ships are moving. They're heading toward us. On the screen, 3 enormous ships broke away from the main group and moved toward the human fleet. They looked like mountains floating in space, dwarfing the human vessels. Are they responding to our message? Hyori asked. I don't think so, said Minji. They haven't acknowledged our second transmission. Hyori made a quick decision. All ships maintain position but prepare for evasive maneuvers if needed. Do not power weapons unless I give the order. Captain, Jawan said, our ships won't stand a chance against vessels that size if they attack. Size isn't everything, Hyori replied. We have speed and maneuverability on our side, and they don't know what we're capable of. The alien ships grew larger on the screen as they approached. The human crew watched nervously, not knowing if this first contact would end in friendship or disaster. Back in the Confederation Command Center, Officer Sunwoo watched with growing concern. Unlike his colleagues, he did not underestimate these small human ships. There was something about their design, something about their approach that suggested cleverness and adaptability. They're not running away, he noted to himself. Interesting. The message from the alien ships flashed on the main screen of the UES Pathfinder. Captain Hyori read it twice, her face serious. The words were clear but harsh. DPARTMMEDDATELI or face elimination. Inferior vessels, YLCURND or for inspection. The bridge crew looked at each other nervously. No one had expected first contact to be so unfriendly. That's not exactly a warm welcome, Jawan said quietly from his station. Captain Hyori tapped her fingers on the arm of her chair. She had trained for many possible first contact scenarios, but a direct threat was among the worst possibilities. They think we're weak because our ships are small, she said. This is a dangerous misunderstanding. Lieutenant Minji looked up from her communications panel. Should we leave, Captain? They clearly have superior firepower. Hyori shook her head. Retreating now might be seen as weakness, and I don't want humanity's first contact with aliens to be us running away. She stood up and walked to the center of the bridge. Send our standard peaceful introduction package. Include all the information about Earth, our history, our achievements. Show them we are worth talking to. Yes, Captain, Minji replied, fingers flying over her console. Hyori turned to Jawan at the tactical station. But quietly bring all systems to alert status and plot evasive paths for all ships, just in case. Jawan nodded and began working. The fleet is acknowledging your orders, Captain. All ships preparing for possible evasive action. Hyori looked at the main screen again. The alien ships were massive black shapes against the stars, looking like floating mountains. Let's hope they're more reasonable than their message suggests. In the Grand Command Center of the Confederation flagship, Admiral Tahoe sat on his elevated chair. Screens around him showed the tiny human ships from different angles. Commander Jisoo approached with a datapad in her hand. Admiral, they're responding with primitive communication attempts. It appears to be simple data about their species and planet. She scrolled through the information. Nothing impressive, and their engines are showing increased activity. Predictable, the Admiral replied with a sneer. They realize they're outmatched and are preparing to flee. He tapped a button on his chair. Send Squadron 6 to intercept. A simple demonstration should suffice to teach these newcomers their place. From the side of the command center, Officer Sunwoo watched with concern. The junior intelligence officer had been studying the human vessels carefully. He noticed patterns that others missed. He stepped forward, his heart beating fast. Speaking up to an admiral was not common, but he felt he must. "Admiral, if I may," Sunwoo said hesitantly, "their movement patterns suggest coordinated defensive formations. This isn't typical of truly primitive species. They're positioning themselves to protect each other while maintaining escape routes." The admiral turned his 4 eyes towards Sunwoo, clearly annoyed at the interruption. "And you are?" "Junior Intelligence Officer Sunwoo, sir." The admiral waved his hand dismissively. "Squadron 6 can handle any primitive tactics. These humans have barely left their planet. Their technology is centuries behind ours." He turned back to Commander Jisoo. "Proceed with the operation." "Yes, Admiral," Jisoo said with a smile. She sent the orders to Squadron 6. Sunwoo returned to his station, worried. The humans were being underestimated, and that could be dangerous. He continued to watch his screen, focusing on the unusual energy readings from the human ships. On the Pathfinder, alarms suddenly blared. Navigation Officer Doyun called out, "Captain, 6 enemy vessels have broken formation and are approaching at high speed." "Show me," Hyori ordered. The main screen changed to show 6 sleek alien ships moving toward the human fleet. They were smaller than the giant vessels, but still twice the size of the Pathfinder. "They're charging weapons," Jawan reported, his voice tense. "Energy readings are off the charts." Hyori made her decision quickly. "All ships, initiate maneuver pattern Delta. Do not fire unless fired upon." Across the human fleet, engines flared to life. The ships began to move in perfect coordination, splitting into smaller groups that would be harder to target. The alien vessels fired their weapons. Beams of bright energy cut through space toward the human ships. But the humans were ready. With surprising speed and agility, their ships twisted and turned, narrowly avoiding the deadly beams. They missed. Someone on the bridge shouted. Hyori remained focused. "Stay in formation. Remember your training." The alien ships fired again, and again the human vessels evaded. The aliens seemed confused by the humans' quick movements. "Captain," Jawan said, "I've analyzed their weapon systems. They have a 3-second recharge time between shots." Hyori nodded. "That's our window. When they fire next, all ships execute Maneuver Omega. Fighters, launch and target their sensor arrays only." When the alien ships fired again, the human fleet suddenly split in all directions. At the same time, smaller fighter ships launched from the larger vessels. The fighters were tiny, barely bigger than a car, but incredibly fast. The fighter pilots were the best Earth had to offer. They flew their ships with amazing skill, darting between the energy beams. They reached the alien vessels and fired precise shots at specific points on their hulls. "What are they doing?" Commander Jisoo asked as she watched from the Confederation Command Center. "Their weapons are too small to damage our ships." But the fighters weren't trying to destroy the alien vessels. They targeted the sensor arrays, the eyes of the ships. 2 of the alien vessels suddenly went dark as their sensors failed. Squadron 6 reports critical systems failures. Commander Jisoo shouted, her voice high with surprise. 2 ships have lost all sensor capability. Admiral Tejo stood up, his 4 eyes wide with shock. "Impossible. How could primitive vessels cause any damage to our ships?" The command center fell silent. Everyone stared at the screens showing the impossible. 2 advanced Confederation warships floating helplessly in space, disabled by the supposedly primitive human fighters. Officer Sunwoo looked at his data. The human fighters had somehow identified the exact weak points in the Confederation ship's design. It should have been impossible for a species encountering their technology for the first time. "Admiral," he said quietly, I believe we have severely underestimated these humans. Admiral Tahoe didn't respond. He was still staring at the screen, his face a mixture of shock and growing anger. In the remaining alien ships, confusion spread. They had expected an easy victory against primitive vessels. Instead, 2 of their ships were already disabled, and the human vessels continued their complex evasive patterns. On the Pathfinder, Captain Hayuri watched as her fighters returned to their carriers. "Status report," she demanded. "All fighters returned safely," Jawan reported. 2 enemy vessels disabled. The others are regrouping. "Good," Hayuri said. "Send a message to the alien fleet. Tell them we don't want to fight, but we will defend ourselves if necessary." The human fleet formed a new defensive pattern, ready for whatever came next. The first battle between humans and aliens had ended, and to everyone's surprise, the tiny human ships had won. The Proxima boundary was a beautiful place in space. Thousands of asteroids floated silently, circling a distant star. The asteroids were all sizes, from small rocks to huge mountains. They moved slowly in their ancient dance. This peaceful scene changed when the massive ships of the Galactic Confederation arrived. Hundreds of alien vessels moved into position on one side of the asteroid field. They were huge black shapes against the stars, each one big enough to hold an entire human city. Admiral Tahoe stood at the center of his command ship's bridge. He looked at the massive view screen showing the asteroid field. Behind the asteroids, small dots of light showed the positions of human ships. "Look at them," Admiral Tahoe said with a smile. "The humans are scattering. They flee already." The other officers nodded and smiled. After their earlier embarrassment, when 2 ships were disabled by the tiny human fleet, the Confederation had brought its full might. This time, they would crush the humans completely. Officer Sunwoo studied his screen carefully. Since the first encounter, he had been promoted and now stood closer to the Admiral. He saw something in the movement of the human ships that worried him. "Sir," Sunwoo said, "I don't believe they're retreating. Their movements appear too coordinated. They seem to be following a plan." Admiral Tahoe frowned. "What plan could they possibly have against our armada? We outnumber them 10 to 1. Before Sunwoo could answer, loud alarms blared across the command center. Red lights flashed from every console. "Multiple human vessels approaching at high speed," shouted the tactical officer, his voice high with surprise. "They're coming through the asteroid field." On the main screen, everyone could see small human ships darting between the asteroids. They moved with impossible speed and precision, using the floating rocks as cover. "How can they navigate through asteroids at that speed?" someone asked. "Impossible maneuvers," shouted the tactical officer as one human ship pulled a tight turn around a large asteroid, changing direction so quickly that it seemed to defy physics. That turn would kill any pilot. The G-forces would liquefy internal organs of any known species. Admiral Tahoe's 4 eyes widened. "Fire all weapons. Destroy them now." The Confederation ships fired their massive energy weapons. The space around the asteroid field lit up with beams of deadly light. Many asteroids were hit and exploded into dust. But the human ships were too quick, too agile. "They're getting closer," the tactical officer shouted. "They'll be in weapons range in seconds." Aboard the UES Pathfinder, Captain Hayuri Kim sat calmly in her command chair. Around her, the bridge crew worked quickly at their stations. The ship shook as it accelerated through the asteroid field. "All ships report ready, Captain," said Communications Officer Minji. "Everyone is in position." "Good," Hayuri replied. She could see the massive alien fleet on her screen. They were powerful, but predictable. "Begin Phase 2. Jawan at the tactical station pressed a series of buttons. "Phase shift technology activated," he reported. "All ships are targeting enemy propulsion systems as planned." Hayuri nodded. The phase shift technology was humanity's secret weapon. After the first encounter, human scientists had studied the alien shield technology. They discovered that the Confederation shields operated on specific frequencies. By shifting their weapons to different frequencies, humans could bypass these powerful shields. All ships, execute attack pattern Omega. Hayuri ordered. Remember your training. Hit and run. The human fleet split into 3 groups. Each group attacked from a different direction. Their smaller size made them harder to hit, and their incredible speed made them even more difficult targets. As they got close to the Confederation ships, they fired their weapons. Unlike the massive energy beams of the aliens, human weapons were smaller but precisely targeted. And thanks to the phase shift technology, they passed right through the alien shields. Direct hits reported across all groups, Minji announced, unable to keep excitement from her voice. Squadron 3 reports successful hits on 3 enemy capital ships. Their engines are failing. Hayuri allowed herself a small smile. The plan was working. What about our ships? Squadron 2 is taking heavy fire, but maintaining formation, Minji reported. The Dauntless and Aurora report minor damage. On the main screen, Hayuri could see the battle unfolding. Her ships darted around the massive alien vessels like flies around elephants, but these flies had stingers that could hurt. The human interceptor squadrons were especially effective. These tiny one-person fighters were piloted by men and women with neural links directly connecting their brains to their ships. This gave them reaction times that seemed impossible to the alien observers. One fighter pilot, Summon, pushed her tiny ship to its limits. She flew so close to a Confederation battleship that she could see details on its hull. Her neural link allowed her to feel her ship as if it were her own body. She fired her weapons at exactly the right spot, hitting a weak point in the alien vessel's propulsion system. "Got you," she whispered as her shots connected. Behind her, the giant ship's engines flickered and died. Back on the Confederation command ship, chaos reigned. 3 more capital ships report critical damage, shouted an officer. They've lost propulsion. 5 more reporting shield failures, called another. How is this possible? Admiral Tahoe demanded. Their weapons should not be able to penetrate our shields. Officer Sunwoo looked at his readings. They've somehow analyzed our shield frequencies and adjusted their weapons accordingly. It's impressive adaptation. Admiral Tahoe slammed his fist down. Launch all fighters. Overwhelm them with numbers. The Confederation launched thousands of fighter ships. These were larger than human fighters, but still much smaller than the capital ships. They swarmed toward the human fleet. But the human ships were ready. They regrouped and used the asteroids for cover again. The neural-linked pilots reacted faster than the alien pilots could follow. One Confederation fighter squadron leader watched in disbelief as a human fighter executed a turn that should have been physically impossible, flipping end over end and firing in the same motion. How do they control their ships like that? He asked over the communication system. No one had an answer. The battle continued for another hour. Despite their greater numbers, the Confederation ships couldn't effectively target the fast-moving human vessels. Meanwhile, the human ships kept hitting vulnerable spots on the alien ships, disabling more and more of them. Finally, Admiral Tahoe made a difficult decision. "Signal all ships," he ordered, his voice tight with anger. "Fall back to defensive position Delta." "Admiral," Commander Jisu questioned, "are we retreating?" "Tactical withdrawal," Admiral Tahoe corrected harshly. "We need to regroup and develop new strategies for these humans." As the massive Confederation fleet began to pull back, a cheer went up on the bridge of the Pathfinder. "They're retreating," Minji announced. Captain Hayuri didn't join the celebration. "Casualties?" she asked. "We lost 17 ships," Jawan reported, his voice somber. 42 damaged but repairable. Hayuri nodded sadly. Victory had come at a cost. But considering they had faced the full might of the Confederation, it could have been much worse. "Signal all ships," she ordered. "Do not pursue. Form defensive positions and begin recovery operations." As both fleets separated, the asteroid field returned to its peaceful state. But something had changed in the galaxy forever. The tiny human fleet had stood against one of the mightiest forces in space. and one. The Grand Council chamber of the Galactic Confederation was silent. 100 alien leaders sat around a large circular table. The mood was very different from the laughter and jokes of their first meeting about humans. High Counselor Hyunbin stood at the center of the room. His tall, thin body cast a long shadow across the table. The 4 tentacles on his face twitched with concern. "This species cannot be underestimated," he declared. His voice echoed in the quiet chamber. "Our scientists have studied the battle data. Their assessment reveals a species forged through constant competition and adaptation." On the large screen behind him, images of Earth appeared. The aliens saw oceans, mountains, deserts, and jungles. They saw cities and the tiny human ships that had somehow defeated their mighty fleet. Humans evolved on a planet with extreme variations in environment, Hyunbin continued. They adapted to survive in deserts, Arctic regions, mountains, and oceans. This adaptability extends to their technology and battle tactics. Admiral Taeho rose from his seat. His uniform was perfect, but his 4 eyes showed anger and embarrassment. The defeat at Proxima boundary had damaged his reputation. "I recommend immediate mobilization of our full military capacity," he said firmly. "We must gather every ship, every weapon. We will crush these humans before they become a greater threat." Many council members nodded in agreement. The Confederation had ruled the stars for centuries. They were not used to defeat. Senior Intelligence Advisor Sun Woo stood next. Just days ago, he had been a junior officer. Now, after his warnings about humans had proven correct, he had been promoted. A full military response would be costly, he countered. Humans have demonstrated they can cause significant damage even while outgunned. Their history suggests they become exceptionally resourceful when threatened. He touched a control panel, and the screen changed. Now it showed images from human history, battles, wars, and conflicts spanning thousands of years. "Look at their history," Sun Woo said. "When the humans fought each other, they developed new weapons and tactics very quickly. When one side created a new weapon, the other side found a way to defeat it, often in days or weeks." The council members watched as images of human wars flashed on the screen. "They consistently develop countermeasures at remarkable speeds," Sun Woo continued. "I believe a diplomatic approach would serve us better. Humans could become valuable allies rather than formidable enemies." High Counselor Hyunbin looked around the room. "We must vote. War or diplomacy." The vote was close, but diplomacy won by a small margin. Many were still angry about the defeat, but Sun Woo's arguments had been persuasive. "Prepare for negotiations," Hyunbin ordered. "We will meet the humans on neutral ground." 3 weeks later, a small space station orbited a distant planet. The station had been built quickly as a place where humans and the Confederation could meet safely. Captain Hyori Kim walked slowly down the corridor of the station. Her uniform was clean and pressed for this important meeting. Behind her walked Lieutenant Minji, Officer Jawan, and 3 other senior officers from Earth's fleet. "Are you nervous, Captain?" Minji asked quietly. "A little," Hyori admitted. "This meeting will shape the future relationship between humans and the Confederation. The United Earth government has placed a lot of trust in us." They reached a large door that slid open automatically. Inside was a conference room with a long table. On the far side of the table sat 5 aliens from the Confederation. Hyori recognized the species from their intelligence reports. 3 had blue skin and 4 eyes, the same species as Admiral Taeho. 1 had tentacles on its face like Hyunbin. The 5th was smaller with green skin and 3 arms. The humans walked to their side of the table and sat down. For a moment, both sides simply looked at each other in silence. Finally, one of the aliens stood up. It was not Admiral Taeho, who was notably absent from the negotiations. "I am Senior Advisor Sun Woo," the alien said through a translation device. His voice sounded mechanical in translation, but his words were clear. "We regret the misunderstanding that led to conflict between our peoples. The Confederation acknowledges the impressive capabilities of your fleet and species. This was a surprise. Hyuri had expected the aliens to be angry or demanding after their defeat. Instead, this Sunwoo seemed respectful, even friendly. We believe there is much our civilizations can learn from each other, Sunwoo continued. We propose a treaty of peace and cooperation. Hyuri stood up, matching Sunwoo's formal posture. The United Earth government seeks peaceful relations, she responded firmly. But we will defend ourselves if threatened. We hope this can be the beginning of mutual understanding between our peoples. Sunwoo nodded, a gesture he had clearly learned was important to humans. We understand. Your defensive capabilities have been thoroughly demonstrated. Was that a smile on the alien's face? Hyuri wasn't sure. Perhaps we can begin by sharing information about our cultures, Sunwoo suggested. Knowledge is the foundation of understanding. I agree, Hyuri said. She motioned to Minji, who opened a data device. We have prepared information about Earth and human history. We are interested in learning about the Confederation's member species and your history as well. The negotiations continued for hours. Both sides were cautious at first, but gradually the atmosphere became more relaxed. By the end of the day, they had agreed on basic principles for peaceful interaction. As they prepared to leave, Sunwoo approached Hyuri privately. May I ask you something, Captain? He said. Of course, Hyuri replied. Your ships, they are so small compared to ours, yet they perform so effectively. How is this possible? Hyuri smiled. We humans have a saying. It's not the size of the dog in the fight, it's the size of the fight in the dog. Sunwoo looked confused. Dogs. Fighting. It means that determination and skill can overcome physical disadvantages, Hyuri explained. Humans have always had to adapt and overcome. It's part of who we are. Sunwoo nodded thoughtfully. I believe there is much we can learn from each other, Captain Hyuri. I agree, Advisor Sunwoo, she replied. Over the next few months, the peace treaty was finalized. Trade agreements were established. Human ships were granted safe passage through Confederation space, and Confederation ships visited Earth. The story of the tiny fleet spread throughout the galaxy. Many alien species were shocked that the mighty Confederation had been defeated by newcomers with small ships. In the officers' club on the main Confederation base, young officers often whispered about the battle at Proxima boundary. Is it true that human ships can turn faster than our sensors can track? One young officer asked. I heard their pilots are connected directly to their ships with their minds, another said. My cousin served on a ship at Proxima. A third officer joined in. He said the humans found a way to pass through our shields like they weren't even there. Across the galaxy, the reputation of humans grew. They were seen as clever, adaptive, and surprisingly dangerous despite their small ships and young civilization. And on Earth, Captain Hyuri Kim stood on a platform as the President of the United Earth government placed a medal on her uniform. For courage, leadership, and bringing peace to Earth and the galaxy, the President said as crowds cheered. Hyuri looked up at the sky, where stars were just becoming visible in the evening light. Among those stars, massive alien ships now moved in peace rather than war. They had learned an important lesson. Never judge by size alone. The tiny fleet had earned humanity's place among the stars. The end.